During the day, they seemed like a loving couple, but at night, her husband would ruthlessly beat her. To make matters worse, every morning, Mari had to wear clothes that In-wook handpicked. Even her undergarments had to align with his preferences. He didn't want any man near her, so he confined her to a lavish villa and installed surveillance cameras throughout the house. Mari tried to escape this nightmare multiple times, but she was always caught. Being married to a wealthy and powerful man, she couldn't break free and faced his violent wrath every time she returned. Mari was reaching her limit and didn't know how much longer she could endure. One day, she called her best friend, telling her she planned to visit her sick mother at the hospital. Under the watchful eyes of In-wook's guards, she entered the hospital, but managed to slip out through the back door to meet her friend. However, In-wook soon realized she wasn't where she claimed to be. He tracked her down just as she was left alone with her friend's boyfriend. Seeing Mari talking and laughing with another man drove him into a jealous rage. Without hesitation, he barged in, grabbed her, and dragged her out. On the drive back, his anger boiled over. He mockingly asked if she had enjoyed herself with the man. Mari tried to explain that he was her friend's boyfriend, and that it was their first meeting, but In-wook refused to listen. He accused her of lying, saying they would have done something improper if he hadn't intervened. Once they got home, In-wook closed the curtains, rolled up his sleeves, and approached her menacingly. The predatory look on his face terrified Mari. Knowing another brutal beating was inevitable, she curled up in despair, silently weeping over her cruel reality. The next morning, the maid brought her birth control pills, which she discarded as usual. Mari knew In-wook wanted a child to trap her forever, and she couldn't let that happen. Unfortunately, In-wook caught her in the act. Enraged, he dragged her into the room, gripping her face tightly. After another violent outburst, Mari's body was left covered in bruises. She couldn't bear this life anymore. The thought of In-wook's touch revolted her, and she ran to the bathroom to vomit. Overwhelmed by hopelessness, she grabbed scissors and cut off her long hair, vowing never to live under his control again. The idea of ending her own life crossed her mind, but she couldn't leave her ailing mother behind. One day, a news report about a renowned plastic surgeon in Korea caught her attention. The doctor specialized in transformative facial surgeries, sparking a daring plan in her mind. One rainy night, Mari slipped out of the villa, evading the guards, and made her way to the surgeon's hospital. She waited outside in the rain until Dr. Young-won finished work. Then she quietly followed him to his house. Exhausted and drenched, Mari eventually collapsed. Dr. Young-won heard the sound of someone falling and rushed outside. He found Mari unconscious and brought her into his home, offering her his late wife's clothes to change into. When she regained consciousness, Mari unbuttoned her shirt to reveal the bruises covering her body. She pleaded with him to change her face, explaining she couldn't live with it anymore and desperately needed a new identity to survive. Through tears, she recounted her harrowing story. Mari had a face eerily similar to In-wook's deceased mother. As a child, In-wook had witnessed his father brutally beating his mother, and he watched her die from those injuries. This traumatic experience deeply scarred him, distorting his psyche. When In-wook first met Mari, her resemblance to his mother captivated him. He manipulated her into marriage, and at first, she believed he was a good man. However, over time, his true nature surfaced. Night after night, he subjected her to relentless abuse, but never hit her face. Mari realized he didn't love her. He was obsessed with her resemblance to his mother. Her cursed fate stemmed from her face. Mari pleaded desperately with Young-won to help her, but he urged her to seek assistance from the authorities. What Young-won didn't know was that Mari had already exhausted all her options and still couldn't escape her husband's control. While he hesitated, Young-won received an urgent message summoning him to the hospital. He asked her to stay at his home and wait for his return. After he left, Mari suddenly remembered that, while she had managed to escape, her sick mother was still in In-wook's grasp. She immediately called the hospital to check on her mother's condition, only to hear that her mother's health had taken a serious turn for the worse. Panicked, Mari rushed to the hospital, unaware that it was all part of In-wook's trap. When she arrived at her mother's room, she was relieved to see her mother was safe. But as her mother pointed toward the door, Mari turned and froze in terror. Standing there was In-wook, the man who haunted her nightmares. He didn't allow her to stay and see her mother. Instead, he dragged her back home, where his fury escalated, leaving her battered and barely conscious. Despite her suffering, Mari refused to give up on escaping her monstrous husband. She began formulating a meticulous plan. In-wook had a disturbing obsession with beating her every night, and Mari knew she had to act carefully. One day, Mari received devastating news. She was infertile. She knew if In-wook discovered this, her life would be in even greater danger. Determined to escape, Mari came up with a daring strategy. That night, she wrote a suicide note and left it in In-wook's car to make it seem like she had taken her own life. Then, she turned off her phone, which had a tracking device, ate a hearty meal, and packed her belongings. She made her way to the beach, leaving her phone behind and carefully arranging her belongings to suggest she had jumped into the sea. Mari finally felt a glimmer of freedom as she gazed at the waves with newfound determination. Meanwhile, In-wook discovered her supposed location and sent his men to search for her. He arrived at the beach and found her belongings, but no sign of her body. Convinced she wouldn't give up so easily, he turned his attention to the dense forest nearby, trusting his instincts that she was still alive. Mari was indeed running through the forest, but she tripped over a tree root, dropping her wallet in the process. Frantically trying to retrieve it, she froze when she heard a voice that filled her with dread. Abandoning her wallet, she bolted through the forest until she stumbled onto a road. Desperate for help, she began waving down cars, even stepping in front of them to block their path. By chance, Dr. Young-won happened to be driving by. He stopped and offered her a ride. Mari explained her plight, telling him she had to fake her death to escape In-wook. The only way to be free was to disappear completely. Moved by her story, Young-won agreed to help her vanish for good. Young-won took Mari to his hospital and prepared for the facial surgery. That night, he asked her what kind of face she wanted. Mari replied that she didn't care how she looked, as long as In-wook wouldn't recognize her. When the surgery was complete, Young-won removed the bandages and was overcome with shock. Even though he had mentally prepared himself, he was stunned to see that Mari's new face was identical to his late wife's. Memories of his deceased wife overwhelmed him, and the pain of his loss resurfaced. Mari, too, had braced herself for this moment. As she opened her eyes and saw her unfamiliar face in the mirror, she felt a wave of emotion. Thinking back to the years of torment she had endured under In-wook, she felt a glimmer of hope. Finally, she had a chance to escape her abuser. She thanked Young-won profusely for giving her a second chance at life. Walking down the street, Mari couldn't stop pausing to look at her reflection in every mirror she passed. Although she didn't recognize the face staring back, she resolved to start fresh and live a life filled with happiness. Despite her freedom, Mari now faced new challenges. With no money to her name, she struggled to survive and was forced to spend her first night of freedom sleeping at a bus station. The next day, Mari suddenly recalled that she had dropped her wallet in the mountains. Left with no other option, she decided to return to retrieve it. However, when she arrived, she saw In-wook's men searching the area. Terrified of being caught, she fled the scene, only to come face to face with her abusive husband on the street. Even though her appearance had changed, the fear that In-wook had instilled in her remained deeply ingrained. Mari quickened her pace, trying to avoid him. In her panic, she accidentally bumped into someone, causing her bag to fall. She hastily picked it up and rushed away, but In-wook called out to her. Frozen in fear, she turned, only to realize he was merely helping her retrieve her dropped belongings. Despite his harmless gesture, the encounter left her shaken to the core. Mari continued wandering the streets aimlessly. Once a wealthy woman, she now found herself eating scraps of bread just to survive. She sought work, but was repeatedly turned away due to her lack of experience. At night, with nowhere to stay, she wandered through the city and sought shelter from the rain under eaves. Unfortunately, she encountered two thugs who tried to take advantage of her. Mari fought back, tearing their clothes in the struggle, but this led to her being taken to the police station. Out of options, she called Young-won for help. When he arrived and saw Mari looking like a frightened child who had done something wrong, he couldn't help but feel sorry for her. After bailing her out, he took her to a restaurant and even thoughtfully handed her a spoon. Mari was deeply moved by his kindness, something she had rarely experienced before, and couldn't hold back her tears. Young-won then brought her back to his home for the night. The next morning, Mari woke up early and prepared breakfast to thank him for his hospitality. She wanted to ask about his wife, but hesitated when he avoided the topic. What Mari didn't know was that Young-won's wife had passed away months earlier, and the surgery he had performed on her made her resemble his late wife. Meanwhile, In-wook had found the wallet Mari dropped in the forest. Convinced she was still alive and hiding from him, he became determined to track her down. Elsewhere, Mari's best friend Hera, who believed her to be dead, was shocked to see someone who looked exactly like her. Unable to process what she had seen, Hera approached Young-won to demand an explanation. He avoided answering her, fearing Mari might overhear. Frustrated, Hera insisted on knowing the truth. When Young-won remained silent, Hera pieced it together on her own and realized the surgeon had given someone else the appearance of his deceased wife. Inside the house, Mari overheard their conversation. The realization hit her. This was why Young-won had avoided discussing his wife. She remembered how tense he had been when she entered the storage room to retrieve the vacuum cleaner. With this thought in mind, Mari went into the room he had forbidden her from entering. There, she found a photo hidden on a shelf. Though she had prepared herself, seeing a picture of someone who looked exactly like her was deeply unsettling. It felt as though she was living in someone else's body. In that moment, Mari understood that Young-won had performed the surgery out of grief for his late wife. Later that night, Mari sat alone in the park, reflecting on everything. Young-won found her there, and she told him she now understood why he had been so shocked when her bandages were removed. Young-won sincerely apologized, but Mari reassured him that there was no need for guilt. She thanked him for helping her escape her horrific life, saying he had given her a chance to live again, regardless of whose face she bore. On their way back, Mari realized that her resemblance to Young-won's late wife must be painful for him. She asked him to meet her for dinner the following day so she could bid him farewell and start her own journey. However, Mari didn't know that In-wook had discovered the wallet she had left behind in the forest. This only reinforced his belief that she was hiding. That night, In-wook remembered how Mari had been wearing an unfamiliar dress the last time she returned home. Suspecting someone had helped her, he hired a female police officer to investigate the brand of the dress. Through her efforts, they identified the store where the dress was purchased. Using an official inquiry as a pretext, In-wook obtained the customer list. He discovered the dress was a limited edition item with only 10 ever made. In-wook reasoned that all the customers who owned the dress would still have it except the one linked to Mari. Confident he was closing in, he continued his search for her. They began going door to door, asking questions, and discovered that everyone still had the dress, except for 2 people who had yet to be visited. They quickly tracked down one of them, Hera. The police officer, using the investigation as a pretext, asked her to show them a similar dress. With no other choice, Hera went to the dressing room to retrieve it. As she searched, she suddenly recalled that her best friend had owned the same dress. Could Young-won have lent that woman the dress? After Hera presented the dress to In-wook, he and the police officer moved on to find the last person on their list. Without waiting for permission, In-wook barged into the house. He immediately noticed 2 plates of food on the table, but couldn't see Young-won's wife, which only heightened his suspicions. Determined, he searched every corner of the house until the bathroom was the only place left unchecked. Inside the bathroom, Mari trembled with fear as In-wook reached for the door handle. But before he could open it, Young-won seized his arm and firmly warned him to stop his intrusive behavior. The 2 men stood in a tense standoff, neither willing to back down. Sensing the situation could escalate, the police officer intervened and urged In-wook to let it go. Reluctantly, In-wook released the doorknob. After stating his purpose for being there, In-wook moved to the closet and began rummaging through it. To his surprise, he found a dress identical to the one he was searching for. This discovery left him deeply frustrated. There were only 10 limited edition dresses, yet here was an 11th. What In-wook didn't know was that during the visit to Hera's house, the officer had accidentally dropped the list of dress owners. Hera saw her best friend's name on it and immediately called Young-won. She learned that not long ago, he had lent the dress to Mari. Acting quickly, Hera hired a courier to deliver the dress to Young-won's house before In-wook arrived. This explained why In-wook left empty-handed, returning home angry and berating the police officer for their failure. Despite finding no concrete evidence, In-wook's instincts told him something was off about the woman in Young-won's house. Mari, meanwhile, had undergone plastic surgery to escape her abusive husband. But Young-won, still mourning his late wife, had given Mari a face identical to hers. Not only did he provide her with refuge, but he also cared for her as he had cared for his wife, using this bond to cope with his grief. At night, he even tenderly washed her feet. Mari was moved by Young-won's kindness and reflected on the horrors of her past. She realized how much a good husband could change a woman's life for the better. But such peace was short-lived. A sudden knock at the door shattered the warmth of the moment. In-wook stormed into Young-won's home ignoring all boundaries, determined to confirm if the woman inside was his wife. As the two men argued, Mari stepped out and addressed Youngwon as her husband, asking if they had a guest. This unexpected scene stunned In-wook, who had no idea that the woman standing before him was actually his wife, now unrecognizable with her new face. In-wook's cold, cruel gaze made Mari shiver. Seeing this, Youngwon pulled her into a protective embrace, using his warmth to comfort her. Faced with this scene, In-wook apologized for his rude behavior and left. However, Mari was so shaken by the encounter that she could barely stand. Youngwon helped her back inside, soothing her fears and assuring her that everything was fine. But the memory of In-wook's harsh eyes haunted Mari, leaving her breathless with fear. She sweated profusely, unable to calm herself. That night, she stayed awake, reflecting on her situation. Over the past few days, she had developed feelings for Youngwon, but she didn't want to bring him any trouble. At dawn, she quietly left his house, determined to start a new life under a fresh identity. She rented a cheap room and resolved to move forward. Unbeknownst to Mari, In-wook was still searching for her. The previous night, when he had seen Youngwon's wife, her nervous behavior had made him suspicious. Convinced that something was amiss, he instructed the police to investigate the woman further. In-wook had no idea that Youngwon's wife had died, and the woman he was so desperately searching for was actually Mari. The police soon uncovered a new lead, discovering that Youngwon's wife was now managing an art gallery. The next day, In-wook visited the gallery but didn't find Hak-young. Instead, he saw Hera, the woman he had seen before. This encounter only deepened his suspicions. Relentlessly questioning her, In-wook demanded to know Hak-young's whereabouts, but Hera refused to tell him. Frustrated, he held up a magazine with his face on the cover and asked if she recognized him. Then, as a subtle threat, he warned her that the gallery could easily be shut down. He gave her 2 days to think it over, promising to return. In-wook was a frightening and depraved tycoon. He had married a woman who eerily resembled his mother and subjected her to relentless abuse, beating her every night. But one day, his wife, trapped in a cycle of domestic violence, suddenly vanished without a trace. In-wook spared no effort, scouring every corner of the city to find her. Eventually, he stumbled upon an oil painting in an art gallery that he believed was linked to his missing wife. When he asked to meet the person in charge of the gallery, the woman in front of him looked visibly nervous and claimed that the manager was overseas attending an exhibition. This only made In-wook more suspicious. After returning to his office, he ordered a thorough investigation into the gallery. To his shock, his subordinate uncovered a startling secret. The gallery was managed by Youngwon's wife, Hak-young. However, records revealed that Hak-young had been in a coma for 5 years after an accident and had never recovered. The revelation left In-wook stunned. A few days ago, he had met Youngwon's wife in person. How could someone who had been in a vegetative state be standing there now? Convinced that Youngwon was hiding something, In-wook became certain that Mari's disappearance was somehow connected to them. Determined to uncover the truth, In-wook went to the nursing home where Hak-young had been staying. To his surprise, she was no longer there. Instead, he found Youngwon. Under intense questioning, Youngwon calmly explained that his wife had fully recovered after 5 years in the nursing home and had returned home. In-wook couldn't find any evidence to dispute this and had no choice but to leave. Yet his instinct screamed that Youngwon was lying. What In-wook didn't know was that Youngwon's wife had died long ago. He had given Mari plastic surgery to make her resemble his late wife. Back at his office, In-wook reviewed all documents related to the art gallery and discovered that it was drowning in debt. This gave him an idea. The next day, he returned to the gallery. Hera, startled by his arrival, asked why he had come in person. In-wook said he wanted to meet the manager and demanded that she call her immediately. Hera repeated her earlier explanation that the manager was overseas on a business trip, but In-wook revealed that he had learned the manager was bedridden and unable to travel. He issued an ultimatum. If the manager didn't appear the next day, he would shut down the gallery. Panicked, Hera rushed to find Mari and explained the dire situation. If Mari didn't step in, the gallery, which they had worked so hard to build, would face bankruptcy. Hera suspected that In-wook was targeting Mari. Mari, overwhelmed, asked Hera for advice. Hera suggested that she disguise herself as Hak-young and meet In-wook under her identity. After returning home, Mari wrestled with the decision. She desperately wanted to help the man who had saved her life, but the thought of facing her abusive husband terrified her. She spent the night agonizing over her choice. Finally, by morning, she gathered her courage and told herself that she was no longer Mari, the woman who had suffered at her husband's hands. She called Hera and asked for all the documents about Hak-young, knowing she needed to study every detail to avoid raising In-wook's suspicions. After reviewing everything thoroughly, Mari prepared herself. She styled her hair straight and sleek, applied thick black mascara, and painted her nails purple to conceal a recognizable scar on her neck. She wore a scarf. When she arrived at the gallery, In-wook was already waiting. Thanks to the plastic surgery, he didn't realize that the woman before him was his wife. But Mari was terrified he might figure it out. She kept reminding herself not to be afraid she was no longer Mari. In-wook, still suspicious, demanded that Hera join them immediately, hoping to uncover Mari's whereabouts. Hera, worried that Mari's identity might be exposed, hesitated, but Mari reassured her with a confident glance, silently signaling that she could handle the situation. After Hera left, Mari found herself alone with In-wook. She tried her best to appear calm, but as she introduced the artwork to him, her nerves betrayed her. She gestured excessively, which immediately aroused In-wook's suspicion. His eyes fixated on Mari's neck, which seemed oddly familiar. Just then, the scarf around her neck slipped off. In-wook bent down to retrieve it, but when he looked up, he was stunned. He saw a neck identical to his wife's. For a moment, he couldn't believe what he was seeing. Mari, realizing her disguise had been exposed, maintained a composed facade and took the scarf back, but beads of cold sweat formed on her forehead. In-wook, shaken, rushed to the restroom and splashed cold water on his face, trying to process what he had just seen. He couldn't understand how this woman's neck resembled his wife's so closely. At this point, In-wook was unaware that the woman he had just encountered was the wife he had been tirelessly searching for. Yet, the seed of doubt about Mari's identity had been planted. Determined to confirm his suspicions, In-wook made an extravagant move. He purchased the entire annual inventory of the art gallery, just to examine Mari's signature on the contract. However, when the moment came to sign, Mari produced a pre-stamped document. Seeing this, In-wook attempted to use the fountain pen he always carried, but Mari, adhering to business protocol, stamped the contract instead, leaving In-wook at an impasse. He could only wait for their next encounter. Mari, emotionally drained from the tension, was unexpectedly greeted by Young-won, who arrived at the gallery. Spotting Mari in his late wife's clothes, memories of his wife flooded his mind. In a slip of the tongue, he called Mari by his ex-wife's name, shattering her composure. Devastated by this and the encounter with In-wook, Mari's legs buckled and Young-won instinctively embraced her. Just then, In-wook emerged from the elevator, prompting Young-won to quickly pull Mari into a secluded corner. Tears streamed down Mari's face, soaking Young-won's jacket. After In-wook left, Mari, still reeling, pushed herself away from Young-won's arms and apologized for her behavior. Young-won offered to take her home, but she declined. Once home, Mari couldn't stop thinking about Young-won, the way he had cared for her, and even saved her number as VIP in his phone. It dawned on her that she had fallen deeply for him, but she felt like nothing more than a stand-in for someone else. Meanwhile, Young-won, on his way home, realized he might have hurt Mari with his earlier words. For reasons he couldn't fully understand, the thought made his heart ache. Could it be that he was falling for her? Overwhelmed by his emotions, Young-won hailed a taxi and rushed to Mari's modest home. Mari was surprised to see him, but they decided to take a walk in the park. As they talked about the day's events, a bicycle suddenly sped toward them. Young-won instinctively pulled Mari into his arms, apologizing for mistaking her for his late wife earlier. He explained that he had just visited her grave and was emotionally unsettled, which had caused the slip. He also confessed that his feelings for Mari were confusing but genuine, and that he wanted to explore them seriously. Mari felt comforted by his honesty. During dinner, Mari revealed that her ex-husband came from a wealthy background and was capable of anything. But Young-won wasn't concerned. His only focus was on protecting her. The next day, Hera confronted Young-won, warning him to stay away from Mari because In-wook was dangerous. She asked if he had fallen for Mari, and his silence confirmed her suspicions. Hera then pleaded with Young-won to let go of his late wife, revealing that she had been unfaithful and was on her way to meet her lover when the fatal accident occurred. Young-won wasn't surprised. He already knew. Hera couldn't understand why he had still cared for his wife for 5 years after the accident, despite knowing the truth. Young-won explained that he had always blamed himself for the accident, as he had known she was meeting her lover but hadn't stopped her. That guilt had weighed on him ever since, but now, with Mari, he vowed not to live with regrets. Determined to protect her, he launched an investigation into In-wook and discovered a striking resemblance between In-wook's mother and Mari when she was younger. He couldn't help but wonder if this was all just a coincidence. A few days ago, In-wook arranged for someone to keep an eye on the doctor and Mari's homes. He discovered that the two weren't living together, which only strengthened his belief that Hera was hiding his wife. Determined to confront Hera, In-wook decided to seek her out. Meanwhile, the doctor uncovered Hera's plan. She had asked Mari to impersonate his late wife to meet In-wook and sign the contract. Furious, he confronted Hera, demanding that she cancel the arrangement. Hera, however, lashed out, accusing him of being unable to let go of Hakyoung because of Mari's current resemblance to her. She believed this was the reason for his growing affection for Mari. Young-won didn't respond, which Hera took as an opportunity to confess her feelings for him. To her dismay, Young-won dismissed her confession, acting as if he hadn't heard it. Heartbroken, Hera broke down in tears in her car. From a distance, In-wook observed their interaction through the car window. Believing Hera held key information, he decided to approach her, confident that she could help him find Mari. Hera, reeling from Young-won's rejection, felt a surge of jealousy. She resolved not to live for Young-won anymore, but to take control of her own life. At the art gallery, she agreed to collaborate with In-wook. As part of their plan, In-wook asked her to arrange a meeting with Mari. That day, Mari thought Hera simply wanted to meet for dinner and was caught off guard when she saw In-wook instead. Nervous, she avoided making eye contact with him. In-wook immediately noticed a stark difference between Mari and the woman who had signed the contract. His suspicions grew, convinced she was hiding something. Just as Mari struggled to figure out how to handle the situation, Young-won arrived. Taking her hand, he reassured her and provided her with a sense of safety. Every time In-wook tried to meet Mari alone to gather information about his wife, the doctor intervened, fueling In-wook's frustration. One evening, as Young-won drove Mari away, she decided that staying with him would only put him in danger. She resolved to leave, but Young-won chased after her, stopping her in her tracks. He made it clear that he wanted to protect her, and despite her fears, Mari couldn't refuse his feelings. Unbeknownst to them, In-wook had followed them. After Young-won dropped Mari home, In-wook waited for him to leave before heading upstairs to confront her. As Mari prepared to sleep, she noticed a shadow outside her window. Fear gripped her as In-wook banged furiously on her door. Panicked, she hid in the corner of her room, frozen in terror. Moments later, In-wook broke down the door, storming inside, his eyes scanning the room for her. Spotting her paintings in the corner, he became more certain his wife was connected to Mari. Shouting her name, he demanded she come out. Mari, trembling in fear, stayed hidden, her body nearly paralyzed. When he finally found her, he grabbed her shirt, his face twisted with anger. He demanded to know where his wife was and accused her of hiding the truth. His yelling only heightened Mari's terror, but she mustered the strength to plead ignorance, asking why he had come. In-wook dragged her to face him, glaring at her with a mix of rage and disbelief. Her face, both familiar and unfamiliar, filled him with suspicion and hatred. Just then, Young-won arrived, punching In-wook to the ground and quickly pulling Mari into his arms. As they left, In-wook, consumed by fury, grabbed a wooden stick and chased after them. Bursting through the door, he saw them standing together, which only fueled his rage. He charged forward, swinging the stick at Young-won, demanding to know what they were hiding. Mari, horrified, called the police as the two men fought. Though Young-won tried his best, he was no match for In-wook. Luckily, the bodyguard noticed the police arriving and quickly dragged In-wook away. Mari saw Young-won's bruised and battered face, and tears began streaming down her cheeks. In-wook, consumed by rage, acted like a madman, destroying everything in his path. He smashed furniture and punched a steel fence with his bare hands, venting his frustration and pain. His belief that Mari was hiding his wife only grew stronger. He continued punching the fence until he left a hole in it, channeling his anger into physical pain. Later, In-wook showed up at Hera's house, his injuries still visible. He accused her of knowing the truth, but keeping it hidden from him. A renowned painter from the art gallery was at the rented house when In-wook demanded Hera tell him where his wife was. Hera stared at the intimidating man before her, and an unexpected sense of sympathy washed over her. She saw him as someone who had never truly been loved, much like herself. Feeling a connection, Hera reached out to touch his face, but In-wook slapped her hand away. He made it clear that his heart belonged only to Mari. In-wook sat in a chair, his emotions overwhelming him as tears filled his eyes. Meanwhile, Mari, seeing how much danger her presence was bringing to Youngwon, resolved to leave for a faraway city. She had already bought a ticket and was preparing to leave when Youngwon called out for her. After waking up and realizing she was gone, he desperately called Mari, pleading with her to stay. Mari sat on a bench, torn between the risk of endangering Youngwon and her inability to leave him behind. Fortunately, Youngwon arrived in time to stop her, and they embraced, crying in each other's arms. Elsewhere, In-wook entered his wife's art studio, picking up the apron she always wore while painting. He inhaled its scent and was flooded with memories of the moment he thought he saw his wife's spirit in Mari. The story of his missing wife was published in the newspaper, drawing the attention of In-wook's father. Furious, his father berated him for losing his wife, calling him worthless. He demanded that In-wook find his wife within 10 days. As he raised his hand to slap In-wook, he stopped only because there were people around to witness it. In-wook left the scene, sitting in his car and reflecting on his circumstances. The driver, noticing his injured hand, asked what had happened, but In-wook simply responded with a bitter smile. Even a driver could see his pain, yet his father didn't care. In that moment, In-wook seemed utterly defeated. To protect Mari from the threat of her ex-husband, Youngwon decided to take her to live at his house. He reassured her that he would face any challenges alongside her. With Youngwon, Mari finally felt safe. The next day, Hera saw Youngwon's injuries and was deeply saddened, but he remained distant. He suspected that she had intentionally orchestrated Mari's meeting with her ex-husband and warned her not to make more mistakes. Under pressure from his father, In-wook intensified his search for his wife, deploying more people to uncover any clues. Meanwhile, Mari decided to visit her mother in the nursing home, but realized someone was following her. Panicking, she called Youngwon for help, only to discover that he, too, was being tailed. With no other choice, Mari abandoned her plan to see her mother. Youngwon and Mari went out together, pretending to be a loving couple to throw off their pursuers. On another front, the doctor's brother, Sung-ho, stumbled upon Mari and was shocked by her resemblance to Hera. Trusting his brother, Youngwon confided the truth to him, unaware of Sung-ho's secret. Sung-ho revealed an old photo of himself, Youngwon's wife, and In-wook. It turned out that Sung-ho had harbored feelings for Youngwon's wife all along. Meanwhile, one of In-wook's subordinates tracked down Sung-ho, hoping to extract the truth and investigate his past. The two agreed to meet, planning to exchange information. Back at home, Youngwon and Mari avoided leaving the house to stay safe. They spent time together cooking, laughing, and growing closer. The bond they shared felt different from anything Youngwon had experienced with his ex-wife. Their love for each other deepened with every moment. Youngwon even soaked Mari's feet, an intimate gesture that expressed his care for her. That night, he confessed his love, explaining that his feelings for her were genuine and not influenced by her resemblance to Hera. For him, Mari was the one who truly held his heart. Determined to show his sincerity, Youngwon planned a special date for the next day. He bought a beautiful bouquet of flowers and headed to the restaurant where he had arranged to meet Mari. He hadn't even entered the building when he received a message from In-wook. It was a photo of his brother and his ex-wife. Youngwon was taken aback. Although he had suspected someone else was involved, he hadn't imagined it would be his brother. The sense of betrayal hit him like a punch to the gut, and his heart raced in panic. Mari sat across from him, sensing what had happened. She confessed her love for him, but Youngwon looked at her as if she were his ex-wife. His mind drifted back to memories of his previous marriage, and the words he had prepared to say now seemed impossible. Youngwon then went to confront his brother, accusing him of being a traitor. However, his brother seemed unaffected, thinking that after Hera's death, the truth would stay buried. Sung-ho even loudly proclaimed that he had loved Hera first and that Youngwon had stolen her away from him. Youngwon couldn't take it anymore. He severed ties with his brother and stormed off in anger. In-wook, deliberately trying to hurt Hera, told her that this was retribution for her. He said he had made the man she loved suffer on purpose. Hera couldn't believe how cruel he was. She asked him what he would do if Mari fell in love with someone else, to which In-wook replied without hesitation that he would kill them both. He believed that was what love was. Hera went to Youngwon's house and found Mari there. In anger, she blamed Mari for everything, accusing her of hurting Youngwon. As Hera was leaving, she encountered Youngwon at the door. She lashed out at him for still not being able to forget Hera, then tearfully told him that his ex-wife never truly loved him. She revealed that Hera had cruelly aborted their child and pretended to have miscarried in front of him. Hera begged Jungwon to take Mari away, saying that if he didn't, In-wook would kill them both. Jungwon was devastated. Mari saw Jungwon crying on the ground and rushed to comfort him, but Jungwon, in anger, questioned her. Why had he loved her so deeply? Why did she treat him this way? Why had she betrayed him and made him suffer? Meanwhile, In-wook was sleeping when he suddenly had a nightmare. He saw Mari turn into a completely different person, and he woke up in fear. His instincts told him something was wrong, and he couldn't shake the feeling that the person he loved the most was no longer the same. Trying to calm himself, he told himself it was just a dream. He picked up an old photo of the two of them, and looking at Mari, he began to calm down. Back with Mari, she noticed that Jungwon wasn't doing well. Fearing her ex-husband would harm him, she summoned all her courage and pretended to be Jungwon's wife, planning to meet In-wook and talk things through. On her way to In-wook's office, she unexpectedly ran into her ex-father-in-law, who startled her so much that she nearly collapsed. To her surprise, he called her back and greeted her. He had investigated and discovered that his son hadn't done anything wrong. He also revealed that Hera's art gallery was on the verge of bankruptcy, suspecting that Mari was using his son for her own benefit. Meanwhile, In-wook was in his office when he found out that the two of them had met. He quickly rushed downstairs to explain things to Mari and protect her in front of his father, afraid that his father would cause trouble. He quickly pulled Mari away and took her to his office. There, Mari told him to stop making things difficult for Jungwon. She explained that the photos were personal family matters and that she had returned to Jungwon. She asked him not to interfere in their lives anymore. As Mari noticed In-wook adjusting his cufflinks, she remembered the time he had beaten her. Fear rose within her again, which only made In-wook more suspicious. When Mari left his office, In-wook stopped her, and Mari's heart raced. She felt like it might explode from her chest. In-wook saw her frightened expression, and his suspicions grew stronger, though he didn't want to believe what he was thinking. To calm himself, he tried to dismiss it as nothing but a delusion. In-wook soon discovered where Mari's mother lived. So he went to the nursing home, but he didn't expect to find Mari and Jungwon there. Just as they were about to leave, In-wook arrived at the door. Luckily, they managed to avoid each other, and In-wook went into the room to visit his mother-in-law. To his shock, she picked up a photo and smiled, saying that it was a picture of her son-in-law. In that instant, In-wook felt betrayed. He was the one who was her son-in-law. He couldn't believe that the woman he loved had brought another man to visit her. He quickly ran out of the nursing home to find her, but Mari and Jungwon had already left a minute earlier. In-wook went to find the nursing home director, who turned out to be Jungwon's brother, Sung-ho. In-wook showed Sung-ho the video recording from the day Jungwon's wife had the accident. It was revealed that Sung-ho and Hera had been fooling around while driving, causing Hera to lose focus and get into an accident. Sung-ho had found Hera unconscious, but didn't call the police, fearing it would hurt his career. Instead, he left her there and ran off, leaving her unconscious for 5 years. Faced with such damning evidence, In-wook demanded to know why Sung-ho hadn't called the authorities. To In-wook's shock, Sung-ho explained that as a doctor, he had assessed the situation and thought Hera would die anyway, but the fact that she'd been in a coma for 5 years before passing away was a miracle. In-wook was furious. Hera was dead, so who was the woman he had been living with? In-wook demanded answers from Sung-ho, asking who that woman really was. Eventually, In-wook learned that the woman he loved had undergone plastic surgery to change her appearance and had been pretending to be someone else. In-wook couldn't believe it. He went to visit his wife's grave, and when he saw Mari's photo, memories of Mari's actions came flooding back. He was now convinced that Mari was the woman he had been searching for all along. In-wook snapped. He called Mari, but she didn't answer. At that moment, she was traveling with Jungwon, and they had finally confirmed their relationship, officially starting to date. Unable to find his wife, In-wook went to Hera's art gallery and caused a scene. He demanded the truth, looking like a madman. Hera advised him to calm down and express sympathy for him, explaining that he had never truly been loved and that he had fallen into a delusion of finding a wife who resembled his mother. In-wook burst into tears. Hera then urged him to let Mari go. To everyone's surprise, In-wook, still crying, suddenly began laughing. He couldn't turn back now. He angrily pointed a gun at Hera's head, threatening her to call Mari, But Hera was unfazed and told Mari to run. Mari still didn't know what had happened. When In-wook took her phone, he told Mari to return by noon, or else he would kill Hera. Mari was terrified and didn't dare tell Youngwon. She secretly hid from him and took a train back. Mari felt cold inside. When she arrived at the art gallery, In-wook rushed over and hugged her. She pushed him away and said that she had replaced the person he loved with someone else, and it didn't matter to her anymore. Unexpectedly, In-wook said that everything could go back to how it was before. He would do whatever it took to make her return to her old self. Seeing Mari's frightened expression, he finally laughed manically, crying and laughing at the same time. Finally, the woman he loved had returned. Suddenly, Hera, not caring about the danger, pushed In-wook away and told Mari to run. In-wook, in a fit of rage, shoved Hera to the ground, knocking her unconscious. Mari quickly fled, but In-wook immediately chased after her. Just as Youngwon arrived, it was too late. In-wook grabbed Mari's shirt, and despite her desperate efforts to break free, he held her tight. She couldn't escape his grasp. Once in the car, In-wook glared at Mari, his rage building. He remembered the time the doctor and his wife had been together, and his heart burned with anger. Fearing that his father would discover his wife's face change, he took her to a villa. Mari begged him to let her go, saying she no longer resembled the woman he loved, and that she had fallen in love with someone else, but In-wook angrily criticized her. He could forgive her for betraying him, but if she continued to resist, he would deal with the doctor and find someone to make her look like she did before. Afterward, he locked her in a room, keeping them separated by a door. Mari, locked away, missed Youngwon and cried, while In-wook also wept, remembering his wife. In-wook had contacted the best plastic surgeon, but all of them refused to help. He went to find Youngwon's brother and threatened him to change Mari's appearance back. However, Sungho told him that only Youngwon had the power to do that, since it was Youngwon who had made Mari look like his ex-wife in the first place. Only he could return her to her original look. In-wook then had Youngwon kidnapped and ordered him to perform plastic surgery on Mari. If he refused, he wouldn't leave alive. Mari immediately knelt down, begging In-wook to spare Youngwon. Seeing his wife kneel for another man, enraged In-wook, he told her to be quiet. Youngwon told In-wook that he didn't understand love, but In-wook laughed and punched him. He accused Youngwon of turning another man's wife into someone who looked like his own wife. In the room, Mari begged Youngwon to restore her appearance, not wanting him to suffer because of her. Youngwon wanted to touch her face, but Mari pulled back, knowing that In-wook was outside watching. In-wook, angry, didn't want to see any more and left. He returned to his room, picked up a photo of Mari, and stared at it. Youngwon couldn't bring himself to pick up the scalpel. Mari, seeing no other option, tried to comfort In-wook. She told him she didn't care who operated on her, and it didn't matter what she looked like after. In-wook took Mari back, leaving Youngwon behind, consumed with his thoughts. On the way back, while In-wook was on the phone, Mari escaped to the main road, determined to end her life there. In that critical moment, In-wook realized what she was about to do, and rushed to pull her back, disregarding his own safety. Mari threatened that if he touched Youngwon, she would destroy herself, and In-wook was truly frightened by her. Seeing this, In-wook took Mari home, preparing to kiss her neck, but she refused. Her father had ordered her return so he could see her, saying he would rather die than not see her body. In-wook didn't dare to tell the truth, only telling his father that Mari was still recovering. His father mocked him, saying In-wook had always lied since childhood, that his mother had left and eventually died because of his behavior. In-wook was devastated. He picked up a photo of his mother and looked at it, gradually calming down. He returned to embrace Mari, feeling peace only when she was with him, but when she turned her head, he saw a different face and immediately lost interest. He pushed her away. That night, in the rain, In-wook saw Mari return, but when he saw her altered face, he couldn't bring himself to smile. The next day, In-wook's father discovered that Mari had undergone plastic surgery. Furious, he was about to hurt her, but In-wook arrived just in time to stop him, hugging Mari and telling his father to hit him instead, not her. He held her close and whispered that he was there for her. However, that night, In-wook snapped again and attacked Mari. Later, Mari secretly went to the painting studio and took out a memory card containing footage of In-wook's violence against her. But In-wook snatched it away from her. Looking at the video, he couldn't believe he had done that to Mari. He had always loved her, but now he had hurt her. As he looked up, he blamed her for everything. Mari couldn't take it anymore. and they argued. She told him his actions weren't love. In-wook lost control and forced her to admit it was all her fault that she had made him do this. But Mari refused to admit it, even if it meant her death. They argued again, and In-wook broke down, crying and rolling up his sleeves. Mari's nightmare was far from over. She sat on the ground, broken and in despair. The following day, Mari and he went out for dinner at a restaurant. Hera happened to be there as well. When she saw Mari head to the restroom, she followed her. Hera urged Mari to run away, but upon touching her, she realized Mari was injured. Alarmed, Hera quickly informed Youngwon. Youngwon's eyes burned with fury, and he stormed to In-wook's house. When Mari and Youngwon embraced, In-wook pulled out a gun. The two were terrified and stepped back, but In-wook aimed the gun at his own temple, which horrified Mari. He declared there was only one bullet in the chamber and said he wanted to prove his love for her. Desperate, Mari fell to her knees and pleaded with him to stop. In-wook smirked at Youngwon with a triumphant expression, but to his shock, Youngwon also picked up a gun. Mari remained on her knees, crying and begging them to stop, but neither would back down. Youngwon told In-wook that threatening someone you love with your life was cowardly. In-wook eventually let them leave, but as they reached the main gate, In-wook's secretary appeared and handed Mari a phone. Mari discovered that In-wook had brought her mother to his house. He had done this to force Mari to come back to him, threatening her mother if she didn't comply. Seeing her mother in that state, Mari panicked and ran back. Youngwon tried to follow, but the guard stopped him. In a flash, Mari was gone, leaving Youngwon heartbroken, watching from a distance. In-wook, obsessed with getting Mari back, disregarded her feelings and insisted she return, even when Mari told him she no longer loved him. In-wook broke down in tears, saying it didn't matter. When he asked if she truly loved Youngwon, Mari didn't hesitate to say yes. In-wook, consumed by despair, screamed that no one could love her like he did. Mari replied that her body and heart no longer belonged to him. Desperate to prove his love, In-wook pointed the gun at his own head. Meanwhile, Youngwon had been working to help Mari. He brought a recording of In-wook's abuse to a lawyer to file for divorce under domestic violence grounds. However, the lawyer said it wasn't enough. They needed either video evidence or medical documentation of her injuries. Fortunately, Mari had secretly recorded one of the times In-wook had beaten her. She had hidden the memory card in a painting and asked her best friend to retrieve it. Youngwon searched the painting all night but couldn't find the hidden card. At the same time, In-wook tracked down the doctor who had performed Mari's surgery and planned to take her there. On their way, Youngwon finally discovered the memory card. Seeing the video of Mari covered in bruises broke his heart. He immediately called In-wook and threatened to release the video unless he divorced Mari. In-wook, devastated, returned home. He asked Mari if she truly wanted to leave, and when she said yes without hesitation, he let her go. In-wook was left alone, drinking and crying. Overwhelmed by his thoughts, he pointed the gun at his head but stopped himself. The next day, he burned everything that reminded him of their relationship and instructed his secretary to file for divorce. Even his secretary was shocked by his decision. In-wook called Mari, agreeing to the divorce but requesting one condition: he wanted to go to court with her alone. Before the court date, In-wook visited Youngwon to inform him of his decision. Youngwon was surprised but agreed. On the day of the hearing, In-wook asked Mari to have one last meal with him. At the restaurant, he tried to persuade her to give their relationship another chance. Mari refused, saying their story was over. As they drove to the courthouse, Youngwon called Mari, and the sound of her phone ringing irritated In-wook. Suddenly, In-wook turned the car around and begged Mari to spend one last day with him, reminiscing about the past at an amusement park. He drove recklessly, causing Mari to try and jump out of the car, but he stopped her. They eventually reached a grassy area by the road, where In-wook forcefully pulled her into the grass. Meanwhile, Youngwon couldn't get in touch with Mari and decided to go find her. In-wook, looking desperate, asked Mari if she had ever truly loved him. Without hesitation, Mari told him she had never loved him. "I'm sorry," she said, explaining that the person he truly loved wasn't her, but someone she resembled, his mother. In-wook, devastated, tried to pull the trigger to prove his love, but Mari managed to stop him just in time. The bullet grazed her, and both of them collapsed, unconscious. When Mari regained consciousness, she quickly called for an ambulance. However, Mari soon fell into a coma due to the shock. Both she and In-wook were taken to the hospital. By the time Youngwon reached the grassy area, they were already gone. In-wook woke up at the hospital but refused surgery. He wandered around searching for Mari, ignoring his worsening condition. Mari, after waking up, fled from the hospital. While escaping, she nearly bumped into In-wook but managed to hide behind a tree until he passed. In-wook continued to call out her name desperately, even as his severe concussion caused him to collapse into another coma. Young-won eventually found Mari, who was walking aimlessly down a road like a lost soul. They finally reunited, their first meeting flashing through their minds. Overwhelmed, Mari broke into tears. Meanwhile, In-wook woke up and demanded clothes from his secretary, who informed him that the police had discovered he had kidnapped Mari and were waiting to question him. Refusing to face the consequences, In-wook tricked his secretary into distracting the police while he escaped. He rushed to Mari's hospital room, but was intercepted by Hera outside the door. Hera begged him to stop, but In-wook shoved her aside and stormed in. Alerted by Hera, Young-won rushed to the scene. He tried to reason with In-wook, suggesting they talk outside. In-wook, however, insisted that his story with Mari would only end if one of them died. Young-won retorted that happiness could be achieved if In-wook simply let go, but his words only angered In-wook, who attacked him. However, weakened by his injuries, In-wook couldn't overpower Young-won. Realizing that Mari would never return to him, In-wook climbed onto the railing and begged Young-won to push him off, claiming it was the only way to end his torment. Young-won, furious and heartbroken, grabbed In-wook's shirt, but just as he seemed on the brink of giving in, Mari arrived. She pleaded with Young-won not to make a mistake because of her. Relenting, Young-won threw In-wook to the ground as the police arrived and arrested him. At the station, Mari bravely recounted her experiences of abuse and revealed the story behind her changed appearance. When In-wook left the police station, reporters swarmed him. He confessed to everything he had done to Mari and even exposed his father's illegal activities, effectively bringing down his father's company. Back home, In-wook told his stepmother to leave, as everything was now over. He confronted his father with a gun, blaming him for ruining his life. His father taunted him, saying that killing him would make In-wook no different. In-wook, torn and enraged, declared he wasn't like his father and ultimately couldn't go through with it. Mari, meanwhile, was alone in her room, sedated by medication. She thought Hera had returned, but it was In-wook who kidnapped her once again. When Young-won discovered this, he called In-wook. In-wook, who had completely lost his mind, gave Young-won an address, taunting him to come witness their deaths. At a villa pool, In-wook held Mari, proclaiming they would die together. He pointed a gun at her chest, believing this was the only way to stay united. Mari, numb and unresisting, waited for her chance. When In-wook's head throbbed with pain, she pushed him into the pool, diverting the gun. Underwater, In-wook sank, realizing the depth of his actions. As he surfaced, he saw Young-won rushing to Mari's side. Enraged, he aimed the gun at Young-won, but Mari stepped in and took the bullet for him. She collapsed, unconscious. Horrified and consumed with guilt, In-wook realized he had shot the woman he loved. In his anguish, he turned the gun on himself, choosing to end his tormented life. With his death, In-wook's tragic story came to a close. Mari was rescued just in time and survived. She and Young-won went on to live a happy life together. The movie ends here. See you in another story. Till then, watch another cool videos. Goodbye.